And so good afternoon and welcome to this very special Beyond Brexit Q&A session that we have with our ministerial colleagues from the Government of Jersey. On behalf of the Jersey Chamber of Commerce, welcome along. Thank you for joining this YouTube broadcast brought to you by the Beyond Brexit team and from the team from 3CI. I'm Murray Norton, I'm the CEO of the Jersey Chamber of Commerce. Very shortly I shall be handing over to our host in the studio, Gary Burgess, who will be handling the Q&A session. Before we do so, we've got something coming towards us that you might term as a meteorite that's heading to Jersey and there's nothing we can do about it. It's called Brexit. Does it mean that it's damage limitation, or does it mean that it is an opportunity? We'll find out a little bit more. And how prepared are we for it? Well, all of those questions will be up for offer to our ministerial team. And of course, you can be asking the questions. We'll just be relaying them. So your opportunity to ask questions right now, you go to slido.com. You'll see it on your screens right now. And you'll see that there is a QR code which you can use to get involved in it. You can just put your questions in. So when you go to slido.com, you put in the code word, which is Beyond Brexit, hashtag Beyond Brexit. So hashtag Beyond Brexit. Once you get to slido.com, then you'll see all of the other questions. You can vote questions up in popularity that you want asked. You can ask your own questions, and Gary will see you through for that. So without further ado, from the Jersey Chamber of Commerce, great to have all of our members and other businesses joining us today for this Q&A. And Gary Burgess, it's over to you.
Murray, thank you very much. Let's introduce our panel for this afternoon. We have a lineup of physical and virtual ministers in our Beyond Brexit room. We have our External Relations Minister, Senator Ian Gorst. We have our Economic Development Minister, Senator Lyndon Farnham. We have our Home Affairs Minister, Constable Len Norman. And somewhere in cyberspace, we have our Environment Minister, Deputy John Young, and our Infrastructure Minister, Deputy Kevin Lewis as well. So, lots of questions to go through. I had my own starter for 10 question, which I'm delighted to see is actually at the top of the Slido list. So please do keep submitting questions and voting those questions up and down as well. Senator Gorst, it's the most simple, fundamental question. What chance do you think there is of a deal being reached at this point? Because it feels like everything you're doing right now is working on the assumption there's not a cat in hell's chance. Do you still have hope?
We don't know the answer to the question, is there going to be a deal or isn't there? I have been hopeful right throughout this negotiation, despite the bumpy nature of the negotiation, and we've seen the talk stop and now we see them start again. I have been hopeful that there will be a deal, but that deal is looking slimmer and slimmer with less in it and less agreement every week that goes past, because we've got the drop dead date of the end of December. I think there'll probably still be a deal of some description, but we really can't be certain, so we have to continue our all eventuality planning. And is there a danger that whatever is called a deal, and we know the UK and the EU in their negotiations will not just go to the 11th hour, but possibly the 59th minute, whether that's early December or otherwise, whatever they call a deal may not actually cover everything that Jersey needs come the 1st of January 2021? Oh, absolutely. It's looking more and more likely, although we can't be certain, that if there is a deal, it may just deal with tariffs, i.e. both sides saying they're not going to introduce tariffs. So that then still would mean that there are non-tariff barriers like the SPS issues, which are checks at the borders for imports and exports. So we really aren't clear whether there'll be a deal or not, and even if there is a deal, that might present challenges to us. Senator Farnham, just expanding on that theme, a variation of the same question, really. I've had it put to me as well. We wake up on the 1st of January, possibly with a hangover, depending on what happened the night before. But maybe the island has an economic hangover as well, and everything's suddenly different. Is that how it has the potential to be, or will life go on as normal initially, regardless of the outcome?
I feel confident that life will largely go on as normal. As Ian said, if there is a deal, the content of that deal would be important. And for us, an important issue is to be able to trade with France as easily as possible. We would prefer not to have tariffs. We would prefer to keep the free movement of goods. But if we do have tariffs, we will deal with it. If we do have to follow a process to export and import goods, we will deal with it. Our ties go back with France centuries, and we have a long history of trading and social and cultural and economic partnership with France, and that will continue. It would be easier if we had arrangements in place. But there again, even if there wasn't a deal between the UK and France, I think there will still remain opportunities for us to maybe do our own arrangements moving forward. So I'm confident that we will continue to have and build upon a very strong relationship with France and the EU.
Mm-hmm. So much of this fundamentally at the start is also about what happens right at the border, whether that's a paper border, an electronic border, a physical border. Constable Len Norman is the Home Affairs Minister. I mean, is this keeping you awake at night?
No, it's not keeping me awake at night, because so much work has been done leading up to this that as far as Home Affairs are concerned, and Customs and Excise and the immigration people are all ready and geared up for day one. So I've got no worries on that score. The administrative systems, the computer systems, if there are tariffs, which we hope there won't be, but if there are ready to go. The immigration rules are in place. So no, I think from that point of view, it should all go fairly smoothly.
I wonder, this confident talk, whether it may be interpreted by some as complacency. I'm sure you will tell me no. I just want to go to Deputy Kevin Lewis. My Facebook memories this morning threw up a reminder that it was a year ago today you compared the worries about Brexit with the millennium bug and the worries about what would happen in the year 2000. I'll get your thoughts on that in just a second, but just to come back to Senator Ian Gorst on this particular point. Deputy Kevin Lewis was saying to me, look, everybody was worried. Actually, when the clock ticked over, it was fine. Are we actually going as far as saying that?
I agree with Senator Farnham that on day one, so on the 1st of January, well, first of all, it's a public holiday. So, as you say, some of us might have a hangover, but it won't be arising out of Brexit. We are doing absolutely everything we can to be prepared, and I think islanders will see very little difference unless they are planning to go on holiday on the 2nd of January. But, of course, there's this other thing going on, which is a global pandemic that people are not expecting to travel and probably be off island over the Christmas and New Year period in the way that they would have been historically. So that means even more. They'll see very little change on day one. The change will be for businesses and the processes that they have to go through in order to keep the flow of goods to and from the island if those goods originate in Europe. If they're coming just from the UK and they've been pre-authorised into the UK, they're not going to see any change whatsoever. So it's things that if we're going on holiday, if you were going to your home in France, things like that, there would be a change. But it's a change about an added layer of bureaucracy. So we don't need to worry about it. We've put a lot of work in. Our officials are to be absolutely complimented, together with Jersey Business and together with Chamber, for all of the work that they're doing to prepare for a potential no-deal Brexit.
We'll come on to, you've mentioned travel a couple of times there. We'll come on to some questions about travel in just a minute. I just want to pick up another question that came up on Slido about the negotiations themselves. How are you feeding into these negotiations? I know you put out the bold statesman-looking photographs of you doing good things, but what's actually really going on? Do they actually listen to little old Jersey in the grand scheme of this massive negotiation when we are effectively the pimple on the backside of the UK from the EU's perspective? Are we really being heard?
Yes, we absolutely are, and we've got a robust process in place whereby my officials speak to the very senior people in Task Force Europe. They are the people that Lord Frost is heading up, actually round the table in London right now negotiating. And I'm not going to tell you, but I know right now what time today and over the coming days they're going to be talking about Jersey and the Crown dependencies and the questions that they're going to bring back about the deal that we are seeking on the table. My officials then speak to me. I authorise what can be said in response. So in real time, the UK government is representing our interests, as is its constitutional obligation.
And when you say representing our interests, do we sit in a bucket called Crown dependencies, or do they actually use the J word and talk about specifically what Jersey needs?
Well, where possible, we've stayed aligned with our fellow Crown dependencies, but it won't surprise you to know that on some issues, for example, fishing, you drill down from just the Crown dependencies to this is what Jersey wants, this is what Guernsey wants, and this is what the Isle of Man wants.
Which is where I want to bring in Deputy John Young on this one as our Environment Minister. Deputy Young, fisheries, of course, has been something we've heard an awful lot about in recent weeks. Indeed, a certain senior politician in Jersey put out a video that captured the attention of thousands of people, not least the comedian Rob Brydon, I understand, is now working on an impression of said minister. But actually, in all seriousness, giving comfort to this fishing industry from your perspective, are we getting what we need at this stage, Deputy Young?
Look, I think it has become our question of the agreement that we've got in place between our neighbours of France, a long-standing agreement, has become one of the main functions, the main focus of the big issue of access to waters between the UK and the EU negotiations. So it's inevitable that when we are at the table indirectly, as Senator Gorst has explained, that what our position is part of that, is part of those talks. And obviously what we want to see in the case of the fishing industry is that the long-standing practice of our fishermen being able to land fish, fresh fish in France and access to those markets without tariffs and without any more complication of what's called phytosanitary procedures and, if you like, bureaucracy, can continue. And if that is the case, obviously there is scope for an arrangement whereby the long-standing practice of sharing our waters continue in some shape or form. But of course, an essence to that is that those arrangements, whatever they are going to be, they must be sustainable, and so make sure that they recognise the needs of conservation measures, which are something which we've been seeking to achieve a long time. So I think the truth is that the Brexit situation has complicated us trying to get to that point, but nonetheless I'm satisfied through the channels that Senator Gorst has explained, through our officers are doing fantastic work at the top table, as it were. They know what we're seeking to achieve, that access to markets without tariffs for our fishing and our aquaculture industries, and if you like, and then that's what our proposals have put forward. Obviously, whatever happens, we will have to make a judgment on that once we know the direction of travel. From my point of view, there's a lot of work still to do to put those things into practice, whichever way it turns out.
And Deputy Young, where does the Bay of Granville Treaty plumb into all of this? Does that continue to sit there and have effect in practice, or just sit there as a theoretical exercise?
No, there's the long-standing agreement goes back way before my time. I think it was former Senator Pierre Horsfall when he was president of the Agricultural Committee. I'm not sure when it was, sometime in the 90s maybe. He entered into that agreement, and of course that has been placed, but life has moved on, and of course what the agreement provided for was negotiations and discussions to try and make changes, and of course those talks were in progress between the French and ourselves, but of course Brexit has come along, and I think it's affected both sides. It's affected Jersey because we were dependent upon the UK position for advancing those, and similarly the French have also been, I think, constrained by the situation of Europe's position too. And so I think we're both, I believe that locally, if you compare us with the French neighbours, the immediate regions. There is a willingness to try and find a way through this, but I think at the moment, clearly until we can get that clarity from the UK-EU talks, I think we are going to have to wait there. But what we try to do is anticipate the various options that could come out of that in the position we've taken with the UK negotiators, who are looking after the Crown dependencies for us. But the key thing is, I believe this is really important. The decisions will be Jersey's once we know what the outcomes are, what the direction of travel is. Ministers will make it, myself and my colleagues with advice will make those decisions, which is best for Jersey.
Okay, let's move from fishing, although we'll stick with France. We've got lots of questions on a far more consumer day-to-day life basis, including: can we still travel to France? Can we still go on holiday? Could Jersey independently join the Schengen area separately from the UK and become part of a new border bloc? On the tourist front, I'll be coming to Senator Farnham, but let's just start on that borders question and all of those themes with Constable Len Norman, the Home Affairs Minister. Parking COVID, I know we can't actually say that because it's here for a while, but parking COVID, imagining my wonderful holiday in France that I've got planned for, say, the 2nd of January. Can I go on holiday, Minister?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, there should be no change to that arrangement. If you're taking your car or planning to hire a car while you're in France or any other part of Europe, you should have an international driving permit available at all good parish halls. And you might need two, actually, if you're going to Spain as well as France, but that's another story. And of course, an insurance green card. But other than that, you should notice no other change. If you want to stay long term in Europe or in France, you're entitled without a visa to stay for 90 days in any 180. And if you feel you want to stay longer than that, you can apply to the French authorities for a longer stay visa. But otherwise, if it's normal holidays, there should be no difference, as I say, except for the green card and international driving permit. So there should be no difficulties there.
It's very easy for those words to spill from your mouth like the most normal thing ever. But actually what you're telling us, particularly if we're driving to France and on to Spain, is it is absolutely not business as usual. We can't just pack up the car, get onto the Condor, presuming it's running on the day we want it, and all will be hunky-dory. There are more things we seriously need to be thinking about now.
Well, there's a couple of things. Yes, now. The international driving permit you should have now. And the green card, the insurance companies are advising you to have that as well. Have it now. Then you're all ready for when you want to go. Make sure your passport's up to date, of course, which we have to do anyway. But these are relatively small things, unless you want to stay longer term, I say more than 90 days and 180, when you'll need to get a visa from the country you're visiting for that length of time.
And let's flip this on its head, Senator Farnham, as well as us going on our hollypops. We want people coming on their hollypops to Jersey as well, maybe using hotels in town and all the hospitality trade as well, and seeing the sights and imagining the funicular railway that might be built up to the new hospital one day as well as a big tourist attraction and infrastructure project. Just thought I'd weave that in there as well. Mm-hmm. Is there a risk that tourism, COVID aside, is at risk we become less attractive overnight to what is a significant growth area for Visit Jersey at the moment, and that is continental travellers?
I don't think there's any chance of us being completely at risk and losing all of our European and French tourism markets that we've worked so hard to build up over the years. The immediate challenge will be in the logistics, because we know that the French tend to have ID cards as opposed to passports, and as I understand it, if there is no deal, or it's quite likely that they will need to have a passport to come and visit us in Jersey, just as we need to show our passport when we go to France. So if that is the case, then I hope that many more French who want to visit us will get passports and come and enjoy our island. That's the same with with all Europeans, all member states and countries of the EU. I mean, the island is open to European and will remain open to European visitors. The team at Visit Jersey now are considering how they're going to continue to market our island to the continent, but it's a very important part of our market. European visitors tend to spend well. They don't tend to stay as long, but they spend well and make a very important contribution. So I think the logistics might be disrupted initially, but in the fullness of time, I think we will rebuild the French visitor programme. Flipping that over, of course, the vast majority of our visitor economy comes from the UK. So we're at the same time we're going to be working extra hard as we get into economic recovery to rebuild our European. Our UK markets as well. We started now by, you would have seen, the ports of Jersey have been busy working with airlines to create new air routes. And so whilst we might see a slight difference in the mix, we might see slightly less European contribution initially. Hopefully additional efforts in the UK market will mean we continue to hold and grow the value of the overall visitor economy.
I just wonder, Minister, how novel you're prepared to be. And I asked this question on the basis of what's happened this year with coronavirus, which has seen some extraordinary governmental A, decision-making, and B, spending that we never thought we'd expect, including, for example, subsidising every visitor to the island to the tune of nearly £200 to have a test on arrival. Would you, for example, if you saw that was a barrier, consider subsidising Europeans to get their passports to get to Jersey? I mean, how out of the box are you willing to think as we're thinking beyond Brexit?
I think we could all be. The whole island can be proud, I think, of the way it's conducted itself through Brexit, the innovative ideas and the global recognition afforded to our borders policy and our track and tracing processes speak for themselves, and that has been an absolutely key part of ensuring our borders have stayed open, not just for visitors, but to allow islanders to travel for other important reasons to and from the island. I think it unlikely that we will be thinking about subsidising Europeans to pay for their passports. I think that's probably not realistic and not really easily achievable. We don't want to interfere with how other countries plan their travel arrangements in terms of passports. What we must do is invest significantly in our tourism product, our on-island product, our transport links, and of course our marketing efforts. And Visit Jersey have done a fantastic job with that in recent years. We must continue to build on those and improve those to show Jersey as a really good and attractive place to visit. And we know we have a really good and strong tourism product here simply because of the reviews we get from holidaymakers and the levels of repeat business we're seeing. So I hope that answers the question.
I'm going to go to a completely different subject now, and this is to do with students. And I'm not sure which of you in the room or virtually is best placed to answer this one, but the question just comes straight in. What fees will students looking to study in the EU have to pay from next year? Suddenly everything feels new, and it might be something you don't have an immediate answer to, but can you give any guidance as to what that will be, how that will change, where that process runs through? Perhaps Senator Gorst, you could begin with this.
I mean, it's the fact that students right now who are on courses will be able to continue as we understand it, but they must check with the institutions that they're at to ensure that they're able to maintain that course at the current fee rate. And if there are islanders who are thinking in future, so next year, of studying at an EU institution, they need to check directly with that institution. If they need support from the student finance team, they are stand willing to support in that research as well.
Deputy Young, I'm going to come to you with a question that's actually quite a loaded question that's just come in. I'll read it directly. Will we retain the resolve and resources to defend the Ekrahos and Minkies from foreign aggression in 2021 and beyond? I know you're not Mr. Borders, but you're Mr. Environment, who cares about lumps of rock wherever they lie. What's your view on this one?
Well, I think this is one that does cross across two ministries, not just myself, but Constable Norman as Home Affairs Minister, because questions of national security and our boundaries and borders and migration, all of which, of course, falls within the Home Affairs responsibility. And obviously, as I see it, the common travel area and all that type of thing and those requirements, our southern border, we're the southern border of that, and so that comes out. But my role, obviously, is looking after, doing its best in place, the raft of policies to protect the environment, both the marine and the terrestrial environment. And of course, we've had debates in the States about that, and there's work in progress, and our new wildlife law will give us a lot more powers in that. So I think on the environmental side, there's plenty of work we're doing there. I've forgotten the detail of the question, but I think you probably need to turn about the policing side, I think, of the ACROs. I think you might speak to the Home Affairs Minister on that.
Beautifully deflected. Constable Norman. Is this people worrying about something they don't need to worry about, quite frankly, or actually is this something on your radar for consideration? We've seen boats rocking up and perhaps not following the COVID rules of checking in with the ports before they arrive in Jersey waters on those pieces of rock. So to take that one step further, when the rules of who owns what and what those border rules are change, will you be keeping an eye on the Ecrahos and the Minkies specifically, or are we worrying about nothing?
Well, there are two different things. You talk about the COVID regulations and people perhaps landing improperly. That's a lot different from the question, which is foreign aggression. I mean, quite honestly, there's no indication that any European nation wishes to invade and take hold and take ownership or annex the Ecraho and the Minkies. I think both Greville and St Martin would have a lot to say about that. But certainly, there are always some interesting things happening on those reefs, which is good to see. Both the customs people are monitoring it from time to time to make sure that our friends from France are not landing, and of course the officers from Greville and St Martin do visit from time to time to make sure everything's in order. But I don't think there's any indication of a foreign aggression. I mean, if Jersey were invaded by a foreign state, the United Kingdom would undoubtedly come to our rescue, unlike they did in 1940. But this time, I think they would, as the agreement is that they're responsible for our defence interests.
But maybe not for the Minkies.
Well, Minkies is part of Jersey.
No, sorry, I was joking. It doesn't need a follow-up. Sorry, your point is well made and understood. I do, though, want to return to a question I did ask you earlier that we didn't get a clear answer to, and it's been voted up the top of the pile. Is it possible for Jersey to independently become a part of the Schengen area outside the EU, or is that just a Venn diagram of impossibility with the common travel area? You can't have your cake and eat it.
Well, you're quite right to say you can't have your cake and eat it. I mean, the Schengen area gives those people who are those residents of the countries which are part of the Schengen area free movement within those countries. The United Kingdom and Ireland are not part of the Schengen area, and in fact, it was in 1971 the Immigration Act created the Common Travel Area, which gives free movement between Ireland, the United Kingdom, and the Crown dependencies, and that so you can't have both.
Yeah.
And I think it's more in our interest to retain our membership of the Common Travel Area than it is to join the Schengen countries. So you can't have one without the other.
Understood. Let's get back to some business thoughts and questions. A couple of days ago, the government unveiled a kind of sort of ish bit of a migration, not quite population, is it immigration, do we know what the heck we're doing policy. So that's good. Everyone's happy about that. Well done, everyone. But as part of that, the consequence for businesses, and Senator Gorst, you are smiling broadly at the prospect of this. We have this policy on the table. The reality for businesses right now that lots of costs are increasing. But then I look at these work permits. If it's the 9-month worker, I think when you add up the two parts of it, it's about £400. If I look at I think it's the 3-year license, it comes on for about £1,000. This is kicking business while they're down. How concerned are you? And can you not subsidise this in the meantime if you're, again, thinking outside the box? We're overlaying COVID and Brexit. Can't you do business a favour?
Are you asking me, Gary? That's not fair.
I was waiting for someone to respond, but I will go with you, Senator Gorst, and then work my way down the table.
So I think Senator Farnham will have something to say as well. And there's a lot that I agree with what you've said, that the current government came into power and said that the proposal that was then on the table about immigration controls, which was largely this proposal but with more refinement, that then wasn't the time to do it because of the uncertainty of Brexit. Now, Constable Norman has released the details of what the requirements will be for EU nationals going forward from an immigration perspective, and I think have made the case that I'm not sure really that other than that we need to be adding an extra layer of bureaucracy onto businesses. There's still a lot of water to go under the bridge. It's still got to be debated by the states. There can be amendments brought forward. We'll still have to then put the processes in place, and I hope that by the time we get to there, I think the Chief Minister said something about 2022, by the time this thing might actually be given effect to, there will be more certainty. But what I fear is that jobs have left our economy because of COVID-19, many hundreds, if not thousands of them, when you actually look at the social security contribution statistics. People have left our island, and lots of other islands are worried about depopulation. We've always been worried about overpopulation and providing for them, but I am more concerned about islanders' jobs right now and how we protect them and support them and grow the number of jobs. And I'm also concerned that we won't have the individuals that we need right here in Jersey to innovate, face the recession that we face and come out of it strongly at the other side. So I'm hoping that this new policy that comes forward will actually take the length of time that the Chief Minister suggests it will, and we can give business some certainty for the next couple of years.
Senator Farnham, just to pick up on that, you're bringing forward a policy that will impose an additional financial burden on business at a time when they are already struggling. We saw the statistics out of Statistics Jersey yesterday about profitability, about sentiment looking forward. It's all looking very gloomy. The dashboard is flashing red, and suddenly you're adding this extra cost to business. Can you not bring an amendment? We know ministers now amend Council of Ministers' ideas. Can't you bring an amendment to waive these fees until further notice?
So I can follow. I hope quite smoothly on from Senator Gorst's comments about protecting jobs and livelihoods. All of the support we've put in place for businesses throughout the pandemic have been with the intent of protecting jobs, protecting livelihoods, protecting business, protecting our key business assets, to make sure we have the business infrastructure in place to take advantage of the recovery when it comes. One of my concerns is for our industries, such as agriculture, such as tourism and retail, and those important sectors of our economy that have lost staff. Staff have left the island because of COVID, and getting them back to fill the spare capacity we have for workforce. We don't have enough on-island capacity to fill all of those frontline jobs. So that's a big concern currently. But I think the migration proposals that have been put in place will help. At the moment, we're seeing especially towards the tail end of the summer, we were seeing shortages in hospitality staff because so many people had left the island who were working in those industries. That was starting to cause wage inflation in those sectors, which of course put a lot more expense onto those businesses and paying for a permit cost. And we have to remember there are advantages to the new migration scheme. So let's talk about the 9-month permit, we call it that, and the 4-year permit. With the 9-month permit, there is a cost, but that employee has to stay with the employer. There can be no movement. So, that sort of the problem with poaching staff in a market that's perhaps short on staff resource won't be there. So I would say a fee, whilst it's, I'd rather we could do it for nothing, but we can't afford to do it for nothing.
Why not?
Hey,
Sorry, I really want to pick up on that money point. That is a political choice. It is entirely within your gift to say, do you know what? We won't have a fee. And you've chosen, this number of 400 quid and 1,000 quid, depending on which licence. That's a huge amount of money.
Okay. So I think the benefit of being able to bring those staff in for your business will potentially help those markets, because we won't see, as long as we can get the right numbers in, we won't see the wage inflation, which puts considerable costs on those businesses. We've seen that to some extent recently. I think I would like to debate those costs in the future. We base these costs on cost recovery. We try and deliver fair cost recovery for the whole taxpayer. Don't forget, this is the taxpayer. All islanders' taxes that go to providing the services that are required to administer these systems. So it's on a cost recovery, and the Home Affairs Minister knows, because we have robust conversations at times about logistics and costs about these things. So let's just say I very much hope we can keep the costs under review, and it will always be based on a cost recovery. We're not looking to make money out of businesses for this. We're looking just to recover the cost to provide the migration policy.
The word robust usually means fisticuffs behind closed doors. Constable Norman, how much of a fight has this one been, and how did you determine that was the cost, and indeed that covering that created cost was the right fee to business?
I think what you need to remember, the migration policy that was launched by the Chief Minister last week is there to discourage people coming to the island, to try and create the people to work already in the island, to try and keep the population as low as reasonably possible. That's why some of these difficulties are being put in place. But as far as immigration is concerned, I mean, there is, despite what the questioner says, that there are no limits on EU nationals coming to Jersey to work. They will now need a visa, and because they become a third country. The employer will need a work permit. But that's always been the case for people coming to Jersey to work from outside of the European Union. And it was 2 years ago, both the hospitality sector and the agricultural sector came to me, and as Home Affairs Minister, saying they cannot get staff from the EU anymore. We need to get people from outside of the EU. They made a very robust case, I'll use that word again, and I agreed that they would be able to bring in workers on a short-term contract, short-term stays for 9 months, to do the jobs that needed to be done in those particular industries. And as far as I'm aware, that has worked extremely well. But those people needed visas, and the employer needed a work permit, and that will now be the case for people coming from the EU as well from the 1st of January. But of course, there are many people already in the island who work in these industries who've got settled status or pre-settled status, and that they won't need a visa nor a work permit. So there are, perhaps it's not as bad as some people might think.
Okay, well, we've recorded that answer. I wonder whether that last part of your sentence will be something that will be played back in the coming months. Well, but thank you for saying so.
I hope so.
Okay, let's go to...
we're not trying to make life difficult for business, because business is the lifeblood of the island. So we want to help them as much as we can. And our record to date, I think, has shown that. There are going to be some challenges. There are going to be some difficulties. I mean, the UK leaving the European Union, Protocol 3 falling away, it's bound to create challenges. It's going to create challenges for the government, for the states, and for business. We recognise that, but the government is here to try and assist in the best way we possibly can businesses to thrive.
I feel like we're doing a full round robin on this question, so let's bring in Deputy John Young as well. So you're not feeling left out, Deputy Young, and also because you are notoriously able to not toe the party line. Your take on slapping £400 and £1,000 additional costs on businesses per employee as Brexit happens, and whilst these businesses are already on the floor financially because of coronavirus?
Well, look, I think we've got a situation where we have to consider the impact on industries and how that plays out. And if you like, am I about to break rank on that issue? No, I'm not. I will take that away and look through the detail and see there might be a case for certain sectors where we might need to provide some support, but I'd want to see a case for that and have it justified. So I would tend to take an analytical approach and a thoughtful one, rather than just, I certainly don't rebel in a kind of, in the way perhaps you suggested there, of breaking ranks. That's not a thing I do lightly, but there are occasions, I think, when, on reflection, some of these decisions that we make collectively, and we make them as a majority, we are going to have, different emphasis and different importance. But on this at the moment, I think I'm a member of the Migration Ministerial Policy Group. I work with members of the group. We had outside members. Murray was on there. And we had other representatives as well. We had economic advice, and I went into that group with an aspiration that we would have a much tighter policy, because my pre-election position was that we should substantially reduce migration in the department because of the impact on our environment. But I have to accept that ministers have to balance considerations, and that group, as a majority, in fact, as unanimous, I think. We were clear these were proposals. How they're worked in practice within government, and we have to pay for those controls. But of course, now I would need to look carefully, because I have to confess I don't know exactly when the fees you're speaking about are going to be applied, and in what group, and whether there are any exemptions and so on. So I'm going to dump that one on Gary. But next time you ask me, I'm getting a shake in the head from Murray here. I'm going to dump that one. Next time you ask me, I'd be able to get clearer on it. There we are. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's all right. I admire the honesty of telling us you're ducking it rather than fudging your way around it. I think Murray is chomping at the bit on this particular one. Murray, can I just bring you in on this point? I wasn't planning to do so, but this is such an issue of fundamental import to business right now. What's the Chamber take on this? Indeed, is it too early to have that? But is there an initial Chamber take on this, whatever we've got, migration policy-ish, that is now in the public domain?
Well, I think the ministers are right in that it is possibly too early, Gary, to have a take on this. But I think we need to keep a very close eye on this. As Len rightly said, there are those with EU settled status or pre-status who will remain in the island, and that will assist a lot of the industries this is going to impact. But yesterday I spoke to a hotelier or a hotel group, employs over 100 people, 9 months work permits at about £400 of cost, between the work permit and the visa, plus of course the police check. And it's a police check which is any country that has been lived in over the last 10 years. And we've already heard of one hotel that's waiting 7 weeks and still waiting for the police check to come through. So there's going to be delays, there's going to be cost because of money. And of course, if you are an EU national who's thinking of working somewhere else, and there are visa costs, or you can only work for 9 months, then you have to leave for 3 months, does that make it less attractive for those people to come and work at a point where it's very difficult to attract people and staff anyway? So there are costs, there are delays, and those costs are going to be there. And as you rightly said, £400, if you had 100 staff, that's £40,000 to a business. Now, is there any way that the government at this time can help with that? Yes, there possibly is. Yes, we need to wait and look a little bit longer. But I think that right now, the impacts to business are going to be costs, delays and bureaucracy, which are going to be added not just with people, but with goods, as we were learning earlier on. So there's a lot of pressure on businesses at a time when they really don't need it. And as the Chamber of Commerce, we have to speak up on that and say, right now, this is what business looks like. I'm talking to businesses at the moment and business owners who are saying, I'm going to have to sell my house. I can't pay the bills right now. I've been waiting for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks now for extra information about funding for particular targeted groups. Now, I know that's on the way, but it's been quite slow. And I just think that we need to speed up this process before we lose too many businesses.
Murray, is there a danger that Chamber is the boy who cried wolf, though? I remember earlier on in the pandemic when certain segments of industry weren't included in certain schemes at certain times, and I had people briefing me left, right and centre that they're all going to go out of business tomorrow, and that didn't quite happen in the round. Of course, there are individual exceptions. Is there a danger of you over-egging this situation, or is it really as bad as you're saying?
I think there's always a danger of over-egging a situation, if I'm perfectly honest with you, but I think we have to highlight all of the possibilities. There are, of course, opportunities. There are, of course, times where we can make the best of situations, and businesses can remodel, and businesses have remodeled because of this. But if we go back to the beginning of the pandemic and bring that into this, Chamber at that time was asking for other industries to be considered for co-funding that weren't considered in the original template that was put forward. And because Chamber fought for that, a lot of those other industries were brought in, because the people that I represent, the businesses, the 600-700 businesses that employ over half the workforce of the island, those people are experts of over 40, 50 years at a time of working in their particular sector. They know it better than anyone else. Let's not have a government trying to tell a hotelier how to run a hotel. The hotelier knows all of the wrinkles in that. And I think we need to listen to those people. And because we listen to those people, we got changes made at the time. So it is the role of the Chamber of Commerce to speak up on behalf of business. That's what our job is. And it is the role of government to balance the books and do what it has to do. And we completely understand that. But I think that at grassroots level, I'm hearing of stories of hardship, stories of worry, and waiting for a day for a decision, or 2 days or a week, is a long time. Waiting for 4 weeks and 6 weeks and still not being able to plan what that business is going to look like at Christmas is very difficult. So I think that it's about limiting those delays and limiting the mental health and stress on a lot of business owners right now.
You paint a very powerful and compelling picture. Murray, thank you so much. Listen, we're into our final 6 or 7 minutes of this session, which I suspect a lot of people have found particularly valuable. I want to flip the sentiment on its head and really get one final answer from each of you before we sum up this session. And I'm going to start with you, Senator Gorst, on this one. My question is, what are the opportunities for Jersey from the 1st of January 2021? Let's do the glass half full version of events.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think there are great opportunities largely arising from the future trade agreements that the UK is going to be signing with other countries around the globe. So today we've just had the signing of the Japan deal. That is a continuity deal which largely replicates what the UK's currently got with trade arising out of the EU negotiations. But we've got the American free trade deal, the Canadian one, the Australian one, the New Zealand one. They're all in progress. We are in conversation with the UK government to make sure that we are involved in those, not just for goods, which is what our relationship with Europe is about, but now for services as well and other sectors of our economy. There's real opportunity there for us to innovate, to access those new markets for new products and new markets. So it's not all doom and gloom. We're still dealing with COVID. Of course, that's difficult. We've got some of this bureaucracy around Brexit, but there's real opportunity for us to continue to be an economic powerhouse, therefore providing jobs and a strong future for all islanders.
Let's, as we wrap this up with final thoughts from each of you, for one of you, the final thought is going to be your first thought, because dressed as an airline pilot, I see Deputy Kevin Lewis has just arrived into the room. Kevin, you've just arrived at the right time because you are Mr. Cheery Optimism in the face of adversity, I know. Give me your 45 seconds and no longer version of the sunny uplands of Jersey 2021.
Mm-hmm. Kevin's on mute.
A little bit on the quiet side, but let's see if we can hear you. Do you want to give it another go? And I'm going to call that off as a bad job, so I'm going to move further down the line to Senator Lyndon Farnham. Senator Farnham, so much to be concerned about, but there has to be some positivity as well.
I think we can. We're sort of we're juxtapositioning here COVID crisis and Brexit. We've got it all to deal with. And the fact is that Jersey's economy has strong foundations. It's very robust, to use that word again. And notwithstanding there have been some and continue to be severe challenges, it has performed relatively well throughout the pandemic. So I think we're going to be starting the new year in a better place than we thought we would be back in March or April. And I take on board Murray's points about the support that we put in place through COVID. And I would argue, I would say that the packages of, probably 150 million that we've put in place to protect jobs and businesses, we've done very quickly, and we continue to do so. We're continuing to manage and monitor. We'll be introducing some new support packages next week, more details of that to follow. So I think we're in a strong place, notwithstanding what's gone on with COVID-19. We're in a strong place. We have good foundations. And due to the really excellent work, officers have been working since 2015 on this, and they've done a fantastic job. I don't think there's any more we could have done to deal with a situation that our islanders didn't vote for. So I pay tribute to Senator Gorst and the External Relations team and all the officers who have put in that position. Having said that, we must it's steady as she goes. We must be careful and continue to monitor the situation closely and be prepared to react very quickly if we have to.
I'm going to have a second go at... Sorry, that's terrible. Have a second go at Deputy Kevin Lewis. I'm going to downgrade you from airline pilot to call centre worker. I can hear you now. Happy days.
I've been called worse, Gary.
Jersey calling. 45 seconds of optimism, Minister. Go.
Absolutely. Yes, well, obviously my main concern was the Vienna Convention with the withdrawal from Brexit and how we interact with our UK and European colleagues. So everything is well in hand. We're working very closely with the Department for Transport in the UK. We signed up to the Vienna Convention. Anybody travelling to Europe would be strongly advised to get hold of an international driving permit available at your parish hall. You may need two if you're driving to Spain or through Spain, but there's two different permits you would need for that. But generally, the one permit will serve you for the rest of Europe. And also the insurance, check out with your insurance company if you're driving abroad whether you need a green card insurance or not. But I think that covers my 45 seconds.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Lewis. Constable Norman, come on, turn that frown upside down. Give us a smile. Your thoughts on 2021. There you are. You can do it.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I totally agree with Ian and Lyndon. I share their confidence for the future. We've gone through an extremely difficult time, and the signs are we're going to come out of it very strong. And what I think is also proved is this pandemic is the support that we have given to our businesses. And what also gives me confidence is the fact, Jersey's famous for its innovation. It's famous for its entrepreneurship. We as a government and as a state have got to be very careful not to second guess what business should be doing and wishes to do and trying to do. We've got to make sure that our communications with the business organisations, with Chamber, with the IOD, with the finance sector, are live, regular, and then make sure that our actions actually work to meet their aspirations, so that we do continue to have full employment, a strong economy, and a good standard of living and quality of life for our residents. And that can be achieved. 30
seconds, because we are really against the clock, goes to Deputy Young.
Thanks, Gary. Well, congratulations on the great question. Everything we've done so far it makes it clear just how great a deal Protocol 3 was. But nonetheless, it's gone. Now, key things, sustainable fisheries. Whichever way it goes, there's work to be done. There will be continued agreements where we get better management of fisheries for the future, looking after our fish stocks, or we will have a sustainable local market with all the infrastructure and support for our fishermen. So either way, in that area there's two. And of course also resources in the environment. The environment has struggled to get resources out of Brexit. We've managed to get strengthening of work for the work we're going to do on putting in place the improved regulation that the as a third country will have to do in things like plant health, etc., etc. So I think there are some positives, but Protocol 3 was a pretty good one, and we're trying to get the best equipment we can in the areas that I'm responsible. Thank you.
Deputy Young, thank you so much. We now need a Jerry Springer-style final thoughts to wrap up this Beyond Brexit session. It's been great to have your company this afternoon. Let's turn to the External Relations Minister, Senator Ian Gorst. Senator Gorst, some final thoughts from you, please.
Thank you very much indeed. And I want to just say, before we finish, thank you to everyone who's tuned in to this two-day virtual conference Beyond Brexit. I want to thank the Honorary Consul. I want to thank Murray, you and your chamber members. I want to thank Jersey business and officials right from across government, as well as members of the public who have tuned in to hear about the implications of Brexit, whether there's a deal or whether there's no further negotiated outcome, and also, of course, importantly, as you've just touched on, Gary, the opportunities, because I believe there are great opportunities for us during 2021. Of course, this week, Gary, you have shown me that perhaps sometimes I'm a little bit too diplomatic when I'm beating the drum for Jersey, and perhaps a few intemperate words can get a greater reach to the message that we are trying to deliver. But I am optimistic about our future. Let's be clear. One of the most important things that we can do between now and spring, and I know that the Deputy Chief Minister is committed to this, as other ministers are, is keep our economy open. In order to keep our economy open, we once again are going to have to rely on all islanders to do the on-island mitigation that has again been announced and enhanced this morning, about ensuring that we socially distance, ensuring that we wear masks where appropriate in public spaces. And if we all play our part, as we have done up until this point, I am convinced we can keep businesses open, we can keep jobs safe, we can keep our children being educated, and we can grasp and take hold of the opportunities that the UK leaving the European Union presents. We can stop focusing on the challenges, although there are challenges, and businesses, please keep in touch with us about what you need to do and what the implications are for you. But our future can be strong, and we can continue to be a successful community. So thank you very much indeed for joining us over these last 2 days.